My listening heart, lean in a little closer. Not because you have been doing something wrong and need correction. Not because this is a moment of urgency or alarm. Lean in because there is something I have been waiting for the right quiet to say to you. Something that belongs to the particular interior space you are in right now. Something meant for the person you are when the noise finally settles long enough for a different kind of hearing to become possible. Lean in because what I am about to say does not shout. It never has. It moves the way a current moves beneath the surface of a river, invisible from the bank, unmistakable when you are in the water. It has been present in every chamber you have ever sat in. It has been threading through every moment you thought you were alone. It has not been loud, but it has been continuous. And it has been speaking directly to the place in you that the loud things have been trying to reach, but cannot. There is a kind of clamor that is specific to this season of the world. You know it well, because you have been living inside it. It is not simply the volume of external sound, though the volume is real enough. It is a kind of internal pressure that the outer din produces. A low, persistent hum of stimulation that keeps the mind moving even when the body has stopped. That keeps the attention jumping across surfaces even when you have deliberately sought a moment to be quiet. The world has built itself in recent years into an architecture that makes genuine quiet genuinely difficult. Every surface offers another entry point for demand. Every moment of stillness carries the awareness that something, somewhere, is requiring your attention and waiting. The hours of an ordinary day have become filled not only with the tasks the day actually contains, but with the ongoing management of everything that wants to be addressed. The messages, the concerns, the information arriving in a stream that does not reduce simply because you stop engaging with it. And underneath all of that, quieter but more insistent, the inward commotion of a mind that has been trained to be responsive, to be available, to be ready, to be alert, until alertness and anxiety have become so intertwined that it is difficult to tell them apart. The quietest voice carries the loudest truth. I want you to hear that, not as a pleasant observation about the nature of things, but as a direct description of what has been happening in your own life. The whisper that has been speaking the most essential things to you, the speaking that has been trying to reach past all the competing stimulation to tell you something about who you are, about where you stand, about what is actually real in the midst of everything that only seems real. That word has never been the loudest one in the chamber. It has been the stillest one, the one that waits, with a patience that belongs to something outside of time, for a moment when the other sounds have tired themselves out. The one that does not compete, the one that does not amplify itself to win a place in your awareness, but simply remains present, day after day, season after season, a steady thread of something true woven into the fabric of every moment of your existence. That presence is not behind you, or above you, or somewhere you have to travel to find. It is speaking from within the deepest part of who you are. And this moment, this specific, unhurried, inward moment, is the kind of moment in which it can finally be heard. What does it mean that I have been speaking to you all along? I do not mean something theoretical. I mean it in the most concrete, practical, immediate way possible. the sense of direction you felt in a situation where the logical choice was not obvious. That was not an accident of intuition. The sudden settling that moved through your chest in a moment of high anxiety, the quieting that arrived without explanation and did not correspond to any change in the circumstances, that was not random chemistry. The persistent returning of a thought that carried something essential, a thought you kept setting aside because the day was too full to sit with it, a thought that kept coming back because what it contained was true and something in you knew it. That persistent returning had a source. Every one of those movements in your inner life was a form of the whisper I am describing. The prophet who had run into the wilderness did not hear me in the great wind or in the earthquake or in the fire that came after. He heard me in a still, small voice. That is still how I come. The gentle, faithful thread of the divine, present in the most ordinary moments of your life, patient in its speaking, faithful in its continuity. You have been hearing me longer than you realize. What is different right now is simply that you have come close enough to listen with intention. Before I describe what carrying peace back into the world looks like, let me say something about the ripple that a single person living from the still center produces in the people around them. You do not have to announce that you have found something different. You do not have to explain your inward orientation or defend your decision to live with less urgency than the surrounding culture recommends. The difference is communicated by the quality of how you are present, not by anything you say about it. When someone who has genuinely been in contact with the sacred stillness enters a room, the space changes in ways that cannot be attributed to anything specific they have done or said. The quality of the attention they offer is different, more complete, more genuinely interested, less occupied with its own agenda. The quality of the listening is different. Not the listening of someone waiting for their turn to respond, but the listening of someone who is actually fully receiving what is being given. These differences are not invisible to the people in the place, even if those people have no language for what they are sensing. They simply feel, in the presence of a person who is genuinely at rest in the still center, that it is safe to be more honestly themselves. That permission is not a small gift. It is one of the most generous things a person can offer to the people in their ordinary life. The light picture I want you to carry from this moment is specific. Not the dramatic, sudden light of a spotlight switched on in a dark place. The quieter light of a window on a cloudy day. The kind of light that is present and workable and generous without being spectacular. A person can read by that light. A person can see their hands and the faces of the people they love and the path immediately ahead of them. It is not the light of absolute clarity about everything all at once. It is the light of enough. Enough to take the next step with some degree of confidence. Enough to see where the footing is before placing the full weight. Enough to move from where you are in the direction of what you are being called toward, without requiring every subsequent step to be visible before the first one is taken. That is the quality of illumination available from the still whisper. It does not light the entire path from beginning to end. It lights the immediate, the next honest word to speak, the next grounded action to take, the next genuine rest to allow yourself. And the immediate, taken with faithfulness and trust, eventually unfolds into a life that has been genuinely and purposefully lived. There is a particular beauty in the way this light works, because it does not require favorable conditions to be present. The dramatic light of spiritual spectacle is unreliable. It arrives in exceptional moments and is absent in the ordinary ones. The quiet light of the sacred inner knowing is not like that. It is available in the ordinary. In the morning, when nothing extraordinary is happening, and the day stretches out with its familiar texture of demands and decisions and small difficulties. In the afternoon, when the energy has thinned and the clarity that was available a few hours ago is less accessible. In the evening, when the day has left its mark, and the inner life is more tired than the face reveals. In all of those ordinary registers, the light is present. Not brighter in the exceptional moments than in the ordinary ones. Present everywhere, without preference for the extraordinary. Because the sacred does not require drama to be real. It is most itself in the quiet, the gentle, the persistent. The kind of presence that does not need to announce itself because it is so genuinely, thoroughly, uninterruptedly there. You have been looking for this. Not always with that language. Not always with the awareness that what you were searching for had a name. But the search has been real, and it has been underneath everything else you have been pursuing in the days and months that have led to this moment. The search for something that does not shift, something that can be genuinely trusted, something that sees you fully and does not require you to present yourself differently in order to be met with care. That search is answered here. It has always been answered here, in the inner depth where the still whisper lives and speaks and persists. The search is over. Not because the questions are all resolved, because the answerer is found. And the answerer has been here the entire time, quieter than the din, steadier than the anxiety, more present than any distraction has ever managed to be, speaking the truest things directly to the deepest part of you. Not from outside, pressing in, from within, already resident in the inner chamber that was built before you knew to look for it, already filling it with the light that the clamor never managed to extinguish. I want to give you something practical to carry as you move back into the texture of ordinary life. Not a formula, not a set of steps to be executed correctly. Simply an image to return to in the moments when the clamor rises back up and the still center feels harder to locate. Picture a chamber within you. Not a spiritual abstraction, but something you can actually locate in your imagination. A specific inward space. It is always quiet in there. Whatever is happening on the outside of that place, however loud, however pressing, however demanding, the quality inside does not change. It has its own light. Not the sharp light of urgency, but the gentle, steady light of a lamp that does not go out. In that chamber, nothing is required of you. Not a particular emotional state, not a spiritual achievement, not a performance of any kind. You are simply there, and being there is enough. The whisper that has always been speaking finds you there, not with urgency, not with demands, with the particular warmth of a recognition that has always been waiting. The recognition of the one who made that place, who placed it in you before you had any awareness of its existence, who has been keeping the light on in it through every season of your life, regardless of whether you had visited it recently. That chamber is not a place you have to earn access to. It is not locked until you get something right. It is not available only to people who have achieved a certain quality of spiritual life or demonstrated a sufficient consistency of practice. It is yours by the simple fact of who made you and how you were made. You belong there. You have always belonged there, in every season, without exception. And every moment of genuine quiet you find, however brief, however incomplete, however mixed with the ordinary din of being alive, is a moment in that space, is a moment in the direct, loving presence of the one who has been speaking the truest things to you since before you were born. The quietest voice carries the loudest truth. Return to that chamber, again and again and again. Not as a performance, not as a discipline to be maintained with perfect consistency, as a returning home to the place you were always meant to inhabit, the home that was there before you knew to look for it, the home that will be there in every difficult stretch ahead, the home that I have been keeping open for you with a patience that the word patience does not quite contain, because it exceeds what patience alone describes. It is love, holding the lamp steady in the window, calling you back from whatever distance the clamor of the world has taken you, always with the same warmth, always with the same recognition, always with the same assurance that you are expected, that your arrival is welcomed, that nothing about the journey has disqualified you from the rest that waits here. So let me speak. Let me use this quiet to say what has been waiting to be said. Not a message of alarm, not a list of corrections. A word that begins in the recognition of what you have actually been navigating. Because I see the quality of what you have been living with, the mental effort it requires to function well in a world that does not slow down simply because a person needs it to. The particular exhaustion of carrying inward burdens while the outer demands remain constant, as though the world has no awareness of the weight a person might be moving through on a given day. The way a crowded morning can press in from all sides before you have had a single moment to locate yourself, to find the quiet center that used to be more accessible and has become, in this season, more difficult to reach. I know the specific texture of what your days have held. I have been present in all of it. And I want you to know, before anything else, that the difficulty of finding stillness in a world that does not offer it freely is not a spiritual failure. It is a human reality that I see with clear eyes and meet with a specific kind of grace. A grace that does not demand you be perfectly composed before it draws close. You have been trying to hear in a space where too many things are speaking at once. That is not a personal shortcoming. It is the condition of anyone living in the midst of what this particular era has produced. An environment of relentless input, where every moment of quiet is treated by the surrounding culture as an opportunity to fill, where silence has been taken over by the assumption that it must be productive, must be purposeful, must justify itself by generating something of use. And so, the silence that the soul most deeply requires has become difficult to access. Not because it is not available. It is always available. It is built into the very structure of who you are. But because the habits of attention that your days have been training into you run in a different direction. The pull is toward the outer surface. The soul's genuine home is the inner depth. And there is a daily friction between those two directions that wears on a person in ways that are real, even when they are subtle. This friction is not something I am asking you to resolve by trying harder. The invitation is not a demand for greater spiritual discipline or a more rigorous ordering of your inner life. The invitation is simpler, and it goes to a different place entirely. It goes to the place beneath the effort, beneath what you do or do not do with your time, beneath whether you have managed to create the right conditions for stillness. Beneath all of that, deep inside who you are, something is already at rest, already quiet, already listening. I am not asking you to manufacture stillness. I am asking you to notice the quiet that is already there, at the center of who I made you to be, untouched by the clamor that moves above it. The din moves on the surface. What I am speaking of lives deeper than the surface, and reaching it does not require extraordinary effort. It requires a kind of surrender, the simple willingness to stop trying to get somewhere and acknowledge that you are already somewhere. You are already in the presence that you have been looking for. The quietest voice carries the loudest truth. And the truth it is carrying for you in this moment is this: you have not been abandoned in the din. You have been accompanied through every inch of it. The things that have been wearing on you have not gone unnoticed. The inner strain of living in a time that asks so much of the attention, the specific weariness of a mind that rarely gets to completely stop, the spiritual hunger of a person who knows there is something deeper available but keeps finding the pathway to it blocked by everything else that has crowded in. I have been present to all of it, not as an observer at a distance, present in the way that only the one who made you can be present, inward, intimate, aware of every movement of the deepest part of you. And what I want you to receive, before we go anywhere else together, is the simple and the foundational. You are not lost in the commotion. You are known within it. Consider for a moment the specific way that the clamor of this season has been affecting the quality of your attention. Not just the external sound, the pinging of devices, the constant low hum of notifications, the ambient awareness of everything that might be demanding a response, but the secondary uproar that this external stimulation creates inside you. A kind of internal restlessness that persists even after the devices are silenced. A residual agitation that the mind carries from the demands of an overstimulated day into the moments that are supposed to be quiet. You have sat in what should be a calm moment and found that the stillness does not arrive simply because the external volume has been turned down. Something in you keeps moving, keeps processing, keeps running the calculations of the day even after the day has technically ended. This secondary din is what makes genuine inwardness difficult for people in this season. It is not laziness or lack of spiritual desire that keeps so many people from the quiet center. It is the accumulated momentum of a life that has been moving fast, that has been trained into a posture of constant readiness, and that does not slow simply because someone has chosen to sit down. What I want you to understand about this is that my word reaches beyond the secondary commotion as well. The gentleness of the divine whisper is not fragile in the face of internal agitation. It does not require the inner life to be perfectly quiet before it can be heard. It moves through the agitation the way a current moves through turbulence, present in it, not overcome by it, finding its way to the places that need it most, regardless of the resistance it encounters along the way. If you have been waiting until you feel properly calm to attempt to hear this whisper, you have been waiting for a condition that the speaking itself does not require. Come agitated, come distracted, come with the residue of a difficult day still moving through you. Come exactly as you are, in exactly the inward state you are actually in. The presence will meet you there. It has never needed you to be somewhere other than where you are in order to speak directly into where you are. Now let me describe something that I want you to understand about the whisper I am speaking of. Not in abstract terms, in the specific language of what it actually sounds like when you encounter it from the inside. It does not arrive in the tones of accusation. When the speaking that comes from the deepest part within you rises into your awareness, it does not arrive telling you what you should have done differently, cataloging the ways you have fallen short, delivering a verdict on your performance. The tone of accusation and the sound of your own inner critic are familiar, and you have likely been living with them for years. They are loud. They are opinionated. They arrive with evidence and arguments and a kind of urgent insistence that they be heard. What I am describing is different in every quality. It is gentle. It is not gentle in the sense of weak or indifferent. It carries an authority that nothing loud can match. But it arrives without judgment, without the weight of disappointment, without the particular sting of being assessed and found lacking. It arrives as something closer to recognition, as though a part of you that had been unnamed has suddenly been called by its actual name, as though something that had been invisible to everyone, including at times to yourself, has been accurately seen. The way the divine whisper distinguishes itself from the other voices in your inward life is not primarily about volume. Anxiety speaks softly sometimes. Worry can make itself very quiet. The distinction lies in what the speaking produces in you after it has been heard. The utterance of fear, however quiet it may be at times, leaves a particular residue, a tightening, a closing, a narrowing of what feels possible, a slight darkening of the air in the space around you. The tone of the ego, even in its most helpful sounding forms, leaves the residue of its own agenda, a slight performance in the direction it recommends, a transaction-flavored quality to the guidance it offers. The sacred inner wisdom I am describing leaves something entirely different in its wake. A kind of opening, a spaciousness that was not there before the word was spoken, a sense of something becoming clear that had been obscured, not because new information was delivered, but because a layer of din was briefly removed, and what had been true all along became briefly, beautifully visible. That clarity does not always arrive in words. Sometimes it arrives as a feeling in the chest that something is right, that a particular direction carries integrity, that a particular fear is not the truth it was claiming to be. It arrives as the settling of something that had been agitated, as the quiet return of a sense of proportion that the noise had been distorting. There is a distinction worth sitting with carefully, because it matters for how you learn to recognize this whisper in the everyday texture of your life. Between the speaking of the ego, which comes from a place of protection, from the accumulated history of what has hurt you, from the patterns laid down by every experience of not being safe, and the word of the deeper wisdom I am describing, which comes from a place of wholeness, from a ground that the injuries of your history have not reached, from a settled knowing that exists prior to everything your life has taught you to fear. Both are present in you. Both have their say in the inward conversation. The ego voice is older in terms of practice. It has been speaking longer, It has more material to work with. It has the confidence that comes from having been listened to for years. The deeper presence is older in every other sense. It predates the fears the ego has assembled. It speaks from a layer of you that formed before any wound had a chance to form. It carries the knowledge of who you actually are, rather than who the world's responses to you have taught you to believe you are. Learning to tell them apart is not a single moment of clarity. It is a practice, a repeated returning to the quality of what each one leaves behind. What closes you is not the voice of the sacred. What opens you, gently, without urgency, without transaction, that is the still whisper I have been speaking since before you first became aware that there was any speaking happening at all. Your body knows the difference, even when your mind is not yet sure. There is a specific physical signature that genuine inner clarity produces, a release somewhere in the chest or the shoulders, a deepening of the breath, a sense of the field of vision slightly expanding, as though a window within you has been opened, and the light that comes through it is different from the light that had been available before. This signature is not manufactured. It is not something you can counterfeit by willing yourself to feel peaceful. It arrives or it does not, and when it arrives, you recognize it, even if you have never had language for it. That recognition is itself a form of hearing the whisper. Not the speaking in words, but the presence in the language of the body, which is one of the oldest languages available to a person seeking to orient themselves toward what is true. There is something I need to say before we are done, and I want to say it directly, so that it finds the part of you where believing actually lives, rather than the part where information is collected and stored. The grace that has been described in this word is not an aspiration. It is not a description of a spiritual level that you are working toward and may someday achieve. It is a description of a reality that is already yours, already present, already active in your life right now, in the season you are actually in, not a future season in which you will have become more spiritually mature, or less distracted, or more consistently practiced in returning to the still center. Now, in this life, with its particular mixture of clarity and confusion, of faithfulness and distraction, of days when the inner light is easy to access, and days when everything conspires to make it difficult. The grace does not hold itself at arm's length until you demonstrate sufficient readiness. It is here, closer than the breath you are taking, more familiar with the core of your life than any other presence has ever managed to be. And the presence that carries this grace, the still, small, gentle, persistent, non-judgmental, warmly attending whisper of the divine, that presence will not stop speaking. Not on the days when you return to it with gratitude, not on the days when you spend so much time in the clamor of the outer world that the inner chamber goes unvisited. Not on the days when you are more aware of your distance from the still center than of your proximity to it. The speaking continues, patient, faithful, present in the way that only what is eternal can be present, without the exhaustion of sustained effort, without the wearing down that comes to everything human that tries to sustain itself over time. This is not a whisper that will tire of speaking to you. This is not a presence that will withdraw when the novelty of your attention wanes. This is the love that made you, tending to what it made, with the consistency of the one who placed the stars in their positions and has not let a single one fall unattended since. So go into your ordinary days carrying this, not the performance of having had a spiritual experience that you now need to maintain, not the pressure of sustaining a spiritual high that the ordinary days will inevitably bring back down to earth. Simply the knowledge, lodged wherever it can lodge, in the bodily felt reality of you, that you are spoken to, that the speaking has never stopped, that the quietest voice in every place you enter is always the truest one, that the sacred inner knowing is more accessible than the clamor has made it seem, and that every honest moment of turning toward it is received completely by the one who has been waiting there in the gentle light of that inner chamber, with the warmth of a recognition that has no beginning and will have no end. Amen. If these words reached a part of you that has been waiting for exactly this kind of quiet, stay here a moment before returning to everything that is waiting. You do not need to do anything with what you received. Simply let it settle, the way warmth settles into a chamber. Come back to this message on the days when the clamor rises again and the still center feels harder to locate. It will be here. The presence it is pointing toward will also be here. It has never left. If what you heard touched your spirit, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the truest things come in the quietest tones. Subscribe and stay close. There is always more to hear, always more to receive, always more of the still, faithful love of the one who has been speaking to your heart all along.